Welcome to the Executive Coaching Podcast, where Executive Coach Alicia Cowan will discuss leadership topics and coaching solutions to tackle the most difficult problems that keep you from leading your team to success.
Hi there, leaders. It's Alicia Cowan. Welcome to the Executive Coaching Podcast, episode number 8. It is a gorgeous March day. It is the 1st of March as I record this, and it is just a beautiful, beautiful day in Tampa, Florida. And we had an amazing weekend this past weekend. We had our 13-year-old daughter turn 13, and she celebrated with a group of her friends, and we took her out to dinner and had a really, really good time celebrating the fact that we now have a teenager, which is wild to say. And it was really fun. And then we also are looking forward to a spring break that's coming up. And so we've been making plans to do some fun things and hit the beach. And so that's what's been going on here at the Cowan household. We also are looking forward to progress on the house, which I know I've been updating you as we move along on building our house here in Wesley Chapel area. And we're so excited because we're a couple of weeks away from drywall, which is crazy to think about. So we've got a couple inspections that we're still working through, but we got drywall coming up in the next couple of weeks, and we cannot wait to seal that sucker up and start going. So that's a quick update of what's happening here personally. We are going to talk about presentation skills today. And I want to talk to you about this in a way about to understand like what some of the mental barriers and what some of the mental challenges we have around facing it, because it truly is, it's a coachable skill to get really great at speaking. And it can be speaking in large forums in front of large groups of people, or it can be speaking in small meetings. And I think what's so important as a leader is that we are called upon to speak all the time, right? And it can be, again, higher stakes meetings like in front of the board, or it can be just leading really day-to-day, but important meetings that we have. And I think it's important as a skill because I think you can be so influential and so impactful, as we all know, when you speak. And why I talk about this in terms of a coaching setting is because a lot of the challenges that we have when we're going through a presentation, and again, it can be informal or formal, are mental challenges. And so really coaching yourself and getting really great at the skill of speaking confidently is one that can be really, really powerful and is not a barrier to overcome that can be overcome. I'll say it that way. A lot of people think that it's just their destiny of like, I'm not great at public speaking, or I hate public speaking. And they just look at it as this like life sentence, when realistically, it is absolutely something that you can work through. So we'll talk a little bit about why it can be such a challenge for people. And then I want to talk about some of the mistakes that I see, like when it is a challenge and not worked through, how it comes up and how it shows up for executives. Okay, the first thing that I want to talk to you about and coach you on is that I've talked about fear before in one of my episodes, and really fear being kind of this underlying symptom, I guess, as we go through some of our challenges as leaders. And this is not any different. When we are presenting, or we are having this fear of public speaking as we present, it is absolutely all rooted back into fight or flight. So our body starts to freak out, and we start to go into fear, and we get anxiety, and we get like nervous, and we feel all those nerves, right? And I'm wringing my palms here for those of you guys can't see me, but you start to get sweaty palms and sweat, and your stomach starts to turn, and your mind starts racing. And again, your body is just reacting to fear, thoughts of fear. And a lot of people don't realize this. A lot of people just intimately just know themselves like, I'm not great at public speaking, and I'm not good at it. And they just don't face that. They have to move through that discomfort and the fear and know that they're not going to die on the other side of it, because that's what our brain is always, it's telling us, right? It's that there's some danger that is going to occur if we move forward with speaking in public. And really, it's not the case. And a lot of times people stop themselves there. They just avoid it at all costs. And I think public speaking is one of the top fears above like death. And it's why people just avoid it and don't do it. And again, separating yourself from the group and speaking in front of, again, whether it's a small meeting or whether it is in front of the entire organization in a town hall, it absolutely can bring up the same fight or flight symptoms and those tendencies, right? So if we don't work through this and we don't, as an executive, if we don't get comfortable with those feelings, it can be really paralyzing and detrimental to our careers. And so I say this because I think even though most leaders kind of like grit through it and work through it, I'm telling you that the more that you can work through some of the thoughts and some of the challenges with it, you can absolutely get to a point on the other side of that where you can speak confidently. And you may still get a little bit of anxiousness and nerves. Know that that's okay. There's nothing that's gone wrong and it's totally normal. It's just when you can be comfortable with that discomfort and repeatedly move through it and reassure yourself that you're not going to die and no harm is going to come of you. And the more you tell your brain that, you can rewire it so you feel comfortable with speaking. Okay. So if you are on that side of just something is just inherently gone wrong with me and I'm not great at it, that's just a thought and a story that we're telling ourselves. Okay. So on the other side of it, I promise you there is a way to feel at least more confident, maybe not fully confident all the time, but it's totally normal to get a little bit of quote unquote stage fright before you speak. Okay. So that's kind of the underlying concept. And again, if it's worth looking at, or if it's like something that's so paralyzing, I know some people really do have a paralyzing fear of speaking, then it is helpful to move through it with a coach or to get help and really kind of work through like, why is it such a blocker? For some of us that are just kind of day to day, a little bit more nervous or a little bit challenged when we speak in public, again, totally normal. I want to talk about what that may look like if we don't potentially work through some of our tics, so to speak. So some of the things that may come up for us with the nerves. So I'm going to take you through my top 10 list of things that I see as I've coached people and trained people on public speaking, and I've coached people through the anxiety or the nervousness that they feel ahead of time. And so I've seen a lot of different instances of how this may show up for you and others. All right, so here's the top 10. Number 1, being overscripted, reading versus speaking, and just being super stiff and afraid of going off script to the audience. Okay, why that's number 1? I think as leaders, we start to outsource and we start to have people tell us maybe what we should say to the organization, or they write bullet points or scripts or whatever for us, and they help us with crafting our thoughts and preparing notes on what to say, which is absolutely fine. What happens though, at times as leaders, we get called on to speak, and at times we don't necessarily memorize the entire speech or what we want to say ahead of time. So we end up reading. And I'll say this, with the thoughts that block that and the thoughts that are challenging are just always wanting to feel like you want to say the right thing. You may not have written or contributed to the script, so there's someone else's words. And as a result, don't give yourself enough time to prep and really take that speech and make it authentically yours and own it, and maybe insert your own thoughts and or maybe some your own appropriate humor or whatever it may be, it comes off as a script. And so I see this a lot of times with leaders, like, again, wanting to stick to the script and feeling like there's a lot of risk if they don't. And I think the audience can read that. And so I encourage you. Doesn't mean we can't outsource and use our team, of course, to help contribute and help us get talking points or getting, agendas together, whatever it may be. But the audience can read when you are nervous to go off script and you're not making it authentically yours. Okay. All right. Number 2, overkill or over-reliance on overdone decks and slides. Okay. Woo. No one wants to read your slides. All right. So there's very few people that do. Okay. There's some other, but really no one wants to read it. And if they do, they're typically getting it sent to them and taking away and reading it anyway. So when you're doing a presentation, When you have so much on the slide and you're relying on that instead of your own presentation skills, it definitely shows. Okay. This isn't everyone all the time, but remember that the slide is a supporting act to you and what you're saying. So a lot of times I've coached leaders on this, and the thought that they want to use is that the team needs to have all the data, and I want to be transparent. I want to make sure that I'm communicating well, and I want them to find me credible. So I need to put all of this information on this slide. Okay. So if that's the thought potentially that you're thinking, or that you need to like use this slide, or everybody who's going to be really interested, they're not. Skip it. Okay. Less is more here. And you want to make sure that your message and your story that you're telling is the most impactful thing. And again, of course, there's a caveat and exception to most of these, but I'll say in general, no one really is that interested in reading the slide. Okay. All right. Number 3, being overly verbose. Using 20 words when 2 will do. Again, less is more. And I think what a lot of times happens with leaders is that they feel the need to fill the pause. It's okay to have a natural pause in your speech. A lot of times our brain, from that fight or flight instinct, is telling us that something has gone terribly wrong if there's this pause, and that we get really nervous and then we start filling up the space with noise. Not necessary. Be clear, concise, and to the point. All right. Number 4, speaking in a roundabout and indirect manner. Okay. I see this a lot, and you can call this the politician move, if you will. So it's the person that they say a lot, but they don't really answer the question and get to the point. The thought error that this may come from, and we've coached this on a lot, is that a lot of times leaders are afraid of being direct with the audience. It leans a little bit sometimes into people pleasing. So they talk around a subject. These, again, sometimes this ties into being overly verbose, but they talk around it and they don't really answer the question directly. And it leaves people on the other receiving end of it giving like the side eye and saying like, huh? I'm not really sure what they said, or I don't think they really said a lot, but they said a lot of words. Okay. So it's okay to be direct, and it's okay even to be direct in saying, I don't necessarily have an answer at this point. That's okay too. Okay. Number 5. I see this mistake where leaders like to use big words or be overly complex in a way to potentially sound more intelligent, or to maybe use some of their knowledge in a way that is a little over the top. So the thought error, I think sometimes it comes from a place of potential imposter syndrome, or maybe a little bit of insecurity. But notice when you're overusing big words or complex topics, when it's not really necessary, if it may come from a place of feeling insecure and like imposter. All right. Mistake number 6, the inability to read the room. All right. So what does it mean to read the room? It's using your empathy and listening skills to what is being said and unsaid. So the ability to read the room really matters in so many different instances. And you have to really be able to not only use your own presentation skills, but tune into what others are giving you on their end. And this is getting increasingly difficult in a very digital and hybrid world. But the importance of like reading the room really can help you in not going astray, or not going down the wrong path, or knowing when to pause and get more information, or if everybody's with you or not with you, right? The ability to read the room is so critical. And a lot of times, again, this comes from the fight or flight. You get nervous. And so they just feel the need to get it over with as quickly as possible, whatever it is they're trying to say, and don't really pause to listen. All right, on to mistake number 7 that I see. Interrupting and speaking over others. All right, so this comes up a lot of times, more so in meetings, less so in presentations. But I think sometimes leaders think that they have something really important and to say, they have a thought that they just cannot wait to get out. And at times, leaders interrupt people and then they speak over them. And so I think this is really important, again, that not only the outward signal that this shows, but also the meta messaging that this can have, right? And the impact it can have on associates if you are constantly interrupting or speaking over others. All right. Mistake number 8, oversharing and talking about yourself more than asking questions and listening to others. Again, a lot of the times we are in presentation mode, so we are talking a lot about subject at hand or perhaps your own experience rather than being able to ask questions. And again, of course, this is more so in an interactive meeting, but the inability to know when to ask questions and make sure you put on pause the commentary about your own experience, your own background, and your own knowledge. Okay. Number 9, big mistake, not working on this skill. Okay. A lot of times, again, in the beginning, a lot of times leaders just kind of brand themselves. Sometimes it is that they are really great at public speaking and they don't necessarily examine it and don't look at it. Or perhaps they're just so nervous about it or just wanting to avoid it altogether that they don't work on building the skill. And again, as you ascend to different levels, and especially when you get to the executive ranks, you are absolutely looked at as a leader that needs to public speak, not only in a way that you're really prepared for, but at times also being really unprepared and caught off guard because you need to just public speak in a moment's notice. Okay. So you have to be adept at doing both. And I see a lot of leaders just avoid it and then don't also brush up on it and don't look at it because we're really caught up in either the avoidance mode or just thinking they're great at it and not thinking it's something that's important. But the ability to speak in public is so impactful on your companies. Okay. Last one, number 10. As a culmination of all of this, I think that the mistake that I see a lot is just not saying anything at all. So again, the fear of saying the wrong thing, the avoidance, the not wanting to make a mistake and getting so paralyzed in perfection, and really having this thought that there's just never going to be the right thing to say, and then therefore withhold. And so even when they're not sure of what to say, they don't even attempt because of the fear. Okay. So not saying anything. Again, as a leader, you are looked at to be the voice of the organization, of the team, and you have to be able to public speak, even if you don't necessarily know the right thing. And that's okay. And so don't let it paralyze you. Don't be a leader that avoids this at all costs. Make it something that you put into your practice and your skill building, where you look at how you're presenting and how you are speaking in public. And you're like, okay, how do I do that? Easy. One of the best, easiest, free ways to get feedback is to record yourself speaking. And you can do this in the comfort of your own home or office, or you can record your presentations if you are doing a speaking engagement or a public speaking event where you'll have that ability to. Or again, of course, you want to get everybody's consensus in the room, but if you want to record certain meetings and play them back on your own and watch them later, you can catch some of the things that I talked about, some of those 10 mistakes that I discussed that I see a lot of, and maybe more. And again, it doesn't mean anything's gone wrong. We're not perfect, present company included, but it's really important to be objective in looking and observing yourself and looking at it. So the best way, that's the best advice I can give you, is to record it. If you want even more help with it, again, I have coached so many people and helped people with their presentation skills. I'm more than happy to help you. So if you know someone that may need some support, or if you yourself want some coaching, you know where to find me. I have my website, Alicia Cowan Coaching. It's Alicia, Elisia Cowan, Keown, coaching.com. And I'd be so happy to talk to you through this. Again, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. Go out there and make a speech. Give a great presentation. Let me know how it goes. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Executive Coaching Podcast with Alicia Cowan. If you're ready to have an executive coach who's ready to help you lead your team to success, then book an introductory call at aliciacowancoaching.com/call.